Hi, and thanks for tuning in to Fasensprung. Today I talked to my friend Caitlin Reilly about how she creates art, how she connects to people and to communities through her art. But throughout the conversation, I can't help but think that she's not just talking about art. Caitlin talks about life, and she also talks about leadership. So if you are a leader, if you lead, or if you just want to know how to trust your creative process, this one is for you.
Herzlich willkommen bei Fasensprung, dem Podcast von Konstantin Schiemert
und Frank Steffen. Hi, Caitlin.
Hey, Frank.
Hi. Third time now. All right. You are in your gallery somewhere in Australia.
It's in a little town called Bangalore, and it's about 20 minutes away from Byron Bay. It's in the hinterland of Byron Bay on the east coast of Australia.
Byron Bay, I remember. I've been there. It's like it's probably the most laid back place in the world. Yeah, so nice there. Can you say a few words about yourself to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm an Australian multidisciplinary artist. I live in the hinterland here, and I create art, and I'm a musician first, and I'm a mom before all of that. I have 3 children and a yogi as well. That's me.
Right. And we you told me that the way you do art these days is that you I'm trying not to get this wrong, like when you come to communities, you have a look at how they do art, like what the materials are that they use, the traditions or ways how they make art, and then you do workshops with them, so you really connect deeply with the communities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really started when I was living in China, because as we spoke previously, I did a residency with the Swatch Art Peace Hotel, which was a fabulous philanthropy down on the Bund there. They give artists a studio for 6 months, and they fly you from wherever you are in the world and put you up, and you just really have to concentrate on making your artwork. But while I was there, I was also doing a kind of a double residency with a textile brand called Shoke, which translates as yak in Tibetan. And my job with them was to follow their production chain from Qinghai, which is on the Western Plateau in China, where the spinning community was. So they span the yak wool there. And then I went from there across to Chongming Island, where they have their knitting community as well, and then back to Shanghai, which is the design center. So I started that community engagement with them then in 2013, and it really was such an enriching process of connecting to people through the crafts practice, because it transcended the language barriers, which was my Mandarin, and also I don't speak Tibetan, and so the disorientation that happens because of language was completely dissolved. Well, not completely dissolved, but when you put a whole lot of people in a room and they're making things, and particularly women, it's such a domestic, natural thing to do, and to sit there and you kind of transcend the barriers of language. So that was what happened in 2013. And then the same company invited me back to do a commissioned body of work in China. And that then was also about community engagement, but this time it was with the elderly in old age care. And so I did a project with the elderly making artwork. And when fine motor skills are impacted, then finger knitting was a beautiful thing to do, and helping people to make work when they're not, physically dexterous was amazing. And then we made a large body of work, and then that was situated in their residences so they could connect to their place where they were, which was an old age care facility. And so we did that in Beijing and in Shanghai. And then most recently I went to Guangzhou And I took my daughter as a translator because she'd, grown up in China, and Pearl is also an artist. So it was really an intergenerational project. And we went to a place called Foshan, which was their predominant material was bamboo. And so we worked with the elderly and the young, and we made this. And I got there and I only had 4 weeks. I went, let's just make this giant heart. And so we made this massive big heart out of bamboo material. And then we made this community workshop with the elderly and the community, and they made these strings, really long strings. And then we hung this heart up from these strings that were made, and it was red, and then we suspended it in the basement of this really old building in Foshan near the levee. And that was so rewarding, just a connection. And then, people visited that for 3 months. But I guess not to kind of detract, my arts practice is founded in a practice of painting. So I'm an oil painter predominantly, and then, and a musician. But these community practices are really enriching and certainly fuel everything else I do creatively. Yeah, it's cool.
There's so many ways I want to get into this right now. Like, so for one, like, I'm really kind of like on my own journey to live more out of myself rather than my ego, and to get into the self, I feel like I need, or a really good way for it is like physical awareness, touch, feel, sensual sense, like sense sensations, like listening, smelling, like just feeling the air when I breathe, but it has so much to do with the body, and thoughts are really getting in the way of that. And what you just described, working with people, like on a knitting project or something where you use your fingers, and that is so tactical, and at the same time you don't have the language, so you have to be super present to like the facial expressions, the body language, like all that. I just think it must be such a strong current, like pulling you into the now.
Yeah, I think, that initial project in 2013, there was a marvelous woman who founded that company. Her name is Carol Chow, and she started Showcase. And, she pretty much said, here, go for it, do whatever you want. And of course, in the back of my mind is, I've only got a certain amount of time. And I love that comment that Rick Rubin actually says in his, that Creative Act book. I don't know whether you've read it, but it's something that I really love. He said, discipline is a harmonious relationship with time. And I come to reflect on that now and think, well, that's, I think time is at it's kind of like this outcome. We have a certain amount of time to make a certain amount of work, but we can't think about that. We just have to be present. We have to connect. And Carol would say to me, don't worry, Caitlin, just do what's in front of you. Just see what's in front of you. And often I would stop myself when I found myself getting away or kind of getting too caught up in what the outcome was going to be of these projects, and feeling a little bit anxious as to what, I had to deliver something in the end and make this work. And every time I would stop myself and come back to that place, which was, it's right in front of me. And that could be as simple as seeing the material and go, oh, let's just do found object sculpture, because there's all this debris, because there was so much urbanization happening in Chongming. And so the found object sculpture just made themselves. And then that thing when I went to Guangzhou, and I was like, I've got 4 weeks and they've given me this building and I have to transform this building, and the mind goes, oh, I could do this, this, and this. And then I just went, what am I doing here? And I just went, it's my heart. My heart is, I have this connection with China because of my heart. And I said, and it's kind of cliched as that is, let's make a heart. And then everyone knows what a heart is. So everyone's got a heart. But the interpretation of that, especially with the elderly people in the community who were helping us to craft this bamboo heart, it was so funny just to see the responses. But everyone could understand this motif. And then to suspend it in this basement of this concrete building. And the wonderful thing was, Pearl then went and filmed the whole process. And then right in front of us is these old TVs, and we transport that digitally into this old TV that sat in the corner. And so everyone was in the heart as well as the strings. And I think on a multi-layered way, it spoke to so much emotional and, spirit connection. And again, transcended. There was no need for language, even though we ended up kind of calling the project Huigui, which means the return. My Chinese is still not so great. But like you say, that thing of being present, the thing of being present, like if you are here, there's so much that happens. You're just in the pipeline of this abundant creative field that comes in and goes, here you go, you can do this and this. And yeah, it's great.
And like, I mean, at least for me, and maybe I'm completely biased and prejudiced, but like when I think about like a place for the elderly in Germany, I think of, like people sitting in a cafeteria, eating cake, drinking cappuccino, staring into blank space, waiting for their families maybe come visit. But China is completely different, right? Like in China, the elderly, they're like dancing in the park. I mean, they are more active than the 2 generations below them, so to speak.
Totally. There's so much life force there, and it's so embraced. And when we were making the strings for the heart, they were just like pushing each other, kind of, no, you do it this way, you do it this way, and this woman knows what to do. And like if I did it wrong, they'd kind of grab my hand and take it away, and it was just so gorgeous. And then the women who cut the bamboo, they do it. They would cuddle me, and then they'd get the knife and they'd take my hand to rip down the bamboo. And I was like, I was scared, I was kind of like, whoa, you know what you're doing with this knife and this bamboo. And they certainly did know what they were doing. But their spirit of the aging there is not, I'm sure there is isolation of sorts. There is in every culture. But I think
but there's more community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly in those experiences where there was an arts festival and it was a very planned event. But I do think, I think it's an evolving thing. I think that the more there's support for connection in those areas of life, the better it is, obviously. But
yeah, I have the feeling it's it really has a lot to do with social media. I can also see how my ex-wife's parents spend more time on their mobile phones now. The channels, WeChat, like the news channels there, and but still they have a very strong sense of belonging into a community, because I think that the way they lived their lives was always with a lot of friends, with a big family, with communities, and
the parks. You go to the park.
Dancing in the park, singing in the park, doing Tai Chi,
amazing.
Yeah, it's like it's still such a huge part in the culture, but I don't really see it with the next generation. Like the next generation is much more about work, much more about making money.
There is this new movement though called lying flat. Have you heard about lying flat?
No, what's that?
So it's where a lot of the young have kind of expelled the idea of going into the corporate world, and they've gone and they've bought land in China. They've created permaculture gardens and farms, and then it's called nursing homes for the young, and they're just lying flat. like they're hanging out there and their lives have become slower and more enriched. I think there's a real need, though, globally for this reconnection to these beautiful practices, like these cultural practices, like in Foshan, the bamboo weaving was, it was intergenerational. You could see the cultural connection through the generations. But yeah, it's fascinating. We have sometimes in the morning over here in the hall, there's Tai Chi, and hi, you can come in and walk through. Yeah, and there's Tai Chi, and there's people practicing Tai Chi and dancing in the hall, and I hear the music and the clapping, and I straight away think of China and Shanghai, and walking through Fuxing Park and seeing people play, and yeah,
Yeah. So was it predominantly women that you were working with on the first project, or were there men as well?
In 2013, I think it was when I went to Qinghai. So the women, Tibetan border, so the women wore these kind of men's suit jackets and they had their hair, it was quite traditional, and then they'd be plaited down and they wore these hats. It was, gosh, they look so cool actually. But that was their traditional clothing. And they were spinners, so they would get the yak wool, and Carol Chow had set up this spinning community in Qinghai. And when it came to us making, some of the men would come in and the women would laugh, and apparently they were saying, oh, they're going to come in and tell us what to do now. So, and then slowly we'd say, no, you have to leave. It was kind of women's business. So, yeah, that's and then in Guangzhou, so that's 12 years later. Yeah, the men were there. They were, a lot of the Chinese artists I were working with were men. Shang Yang, phenomenal Chinese artist. He makes these kind of frescoes and then carves back into them and does beautiful, really miniature portraits of everyday people in the area. But when we were doing the actual weaving of the heartstrings, it was just women. Yeah. And
Did
likewise
men
here,
try to get involved?
no, no, it was
Yeah.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't that they weren't involved. They were actually doing the documentation of the project, so there was a lot of
Okay.
guys that were doing digital process. It was interesting, actually. Is there
But
a more gender orientated practice that men and women
I mean,
more directed to crafts
when
practices?
I look at in the parks where there's a lot of elderly community kind of stuff going on, there's also a lot more women. I feel
Yeah,
like, especially and it's not like when they do like Western kind of dance in the park, and when there's not
oh,
many men.
no,
Feel
that's true. But in
right, like,
Qinghai, in the Western Plateau,
yeah.
we had to climatize because it's so high up, and we walked through the main area of town, and so we're getting there, and its sun was going down, and the locals all meet in the open area there, and they dance. And it was very equal, men and women. And we spoke to some of the young kids, and I said, so why do you come here? And they go, because all the good-looking boys come here to dance. There's a reason.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, you were saying that when you were in the project, you sometimes your mind sometimes went to how can I deliver, or how is this going to end, or how is the end product looking like? So I wonder, like, because when I was in school, my major was arts, and I think my biggest problem was that while I was making art, I was constantly comparing myself to the other students. I was always comparing my art to the person next to me who was preparing art, like in the course. Um, have
We're
have
65.
have have you
Sorry,
had
I just
like
walked in and
no
asked me
problem?
about the price of one of the bags in here that has a beautiful flower on it. But I am with you. And on the comparative analysis thing, I mean, I think what comes to
And
mind as I'm listening to you talk about that is it John Cage that said, you know, you go to the studio and at first you've got your mother, your brother, your lover, your enemy there with you. And you've got all the voices there with you. And then slowly, one by one, they leave. And if you're lucky, you leave too.
so is that your experience?
Yeah.
Like
And I think it just takes
have
practice to actually let
okay,
those
so
go.
I want to
Yeah.
understand that. I'm really interested in that. Like, was there a time for you, like becoming an artist, where you still compared your work to other artists, or when you
Yeah. I mean, I
compared,
think it's
you
nat-
know,
I think the
huh?
human condition, I think the human condition, the more that I kind of look at his history and go, well, the human condition is more about, it has previously always been about, like, what does someone else think? Or, you know, measuring stick, where is that measuring stick? But I think it's very defeating. I think even though it's probably our natural go-to, you know, they say now we're more and more negatively biased the way that we talk to ourselves. So how do you change that negative self-talk? Well, I do it with affirmations, actually. And I think our brain needs to have a shower just as much as our body does, because we can fill it up with a whole lot of rubbish more and more, especially these days when there's so much coming toward us, information. But I think when I'm just making, because I have that lived experience of creating and that freedom to create, I trust that. And so even though my head might have comparative analysis in it to start with, it just dissipates and it goes less and less. And then now I just trust myself to know that I'm just in a creative process, and I trust that creative process, and I try and not be hard on myself in thinking that it has to be something, or it's that thing of staying away from the outcome of the work. And when I stay away from that and I'm just in that process of making, then that's a joy. That's a great thing, regardless of whether it's what it is. It doesn't matter. But I think comparative analysis, it doesn't serve us if it's a measuring stick of, oh, is this a good piece of work? Is this a bad piece of work? How can one reduce something like art to those two things? I think it's great to look at other people's work and to see things that we can go, oh, isn't that amazing? Or how did they create that surface on that painting? Or I'm intrigued by certain practices that people do, so that then I can come back to my studio and maybe use that medium that they used or the beeswax that they used to create the finish that I would like on a piece of work. Or, oh, they've painted on aluminium. What does that feel like? And so I think it's healthy to have a natural curiosity for these things. But, you know, no one else is going to make work the way I make it, and no one else is going to make work the way you make it. And it's like, that's the thing that is great. It'd be boring if it was something else, wouldn't it?
You know, everything you just said, you could say about life. You know that, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I think what really stuck out to me now, and what helped me, is that, I mean, what I understood was that in art and maybe in life, there is a time where I compare myself to others, where I maybe compare today's work with yesterday's work, even my own, and it's okay, you know, and I just need to stick with it and keep doing it. And as time passes, I learn to trust, like you said, the artistic process, the creative process, the maybe myself. and I don't have that from the start. And I think knowing that can give us the courage to just keep going and not give up.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think when we have when we face something that's new and we don't know what it is, there's always that, oh, what is this? I'm unsure of myself here. I remember, learning to make Indian food, and I was always really intimidated by the spices. I really loved the food, but I was always really intimidated by the spices. Like I didn't know what a mustard seed would do with turmeric or da-da-da, but gee, I loved them. And I went to this Indian cooking class, and there was an Indian Dada chef there, and he said, "You are going to sit there and write the recipe." And I went, "Yes, I am. I'm going to write the recipe." And I really learnt by sitting down and writing out what it was. And, dal's one of my staple in my diet. But I was very grateful to that learning process of, if I write this down, I will take this in a different way, and I'll be able to go home and I'll watch and I'll make this and I'll do it again. So I think to document process is a really helpful tool in the creative process. And it's a bit like mixing paint or mixing a color. How did I get there? The other day a friend sent me a photo of this color, and I just knew how to get there. If you mix this part cerulean and you put Payne's grey with this, and then a little bit of cadmium yellow, and then make sure you've got a lot of titanium white. That's what Lucian Freud used to say. Make sure you've got a lot of titanium white there. So the recipes, and once we know, this works, then we can go, yeah. But sometimes I forget to go, that's right. If I do X, Y, and Z, I've got to write this down, or I've got to take note of this. Because when you're in the motion of doing things, you can get lost with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we afraid of the new? And especially in art, I find it fascinating right now, the parallel between art and life, because when I remember making art, it was always new. Every piece was new. And it's exactly like you said, I was afraid of the new. I didn't know what would come out, and it was completely new. And I felt somehow entrenched with it because it was my work, or I felt back then it was my work. It came from me, from my skill. But same with life, like new stuff scares me. Why?
I don't know why. I could say, like, I don't know why it scares you, but I don't know why for me too. Like sometimes, not so much these days though. Hey Frank, I think my life is pretty simple. I wake up, I move my body a bit, then I go to the ocean most days, and I throw myself in the ocean regardless of how warm or how cold it is, and every day is different, and I'm grateful that it's different. It'd be really dull, wouldn't it, if it was the same every day. And then, I sit and I have a little breath and I meditate, and then I get on with my to-do list of the day. But then the unexpected happens. I go to my gallery where it's open to the public, and so many different people walk in, and so many different connections are made in a day. And sometimes no one walks in too. Sometimes I'm just looking out the window to this beautiful view that is in front of me right now. I think, yeah, we all get scared, don't we? We all have fears. I think it's good to know things that make us feel scared and things that don't. And I think when we can go, these things don't make me feel scared, like going into the nature, into the unknown in the nature, even though I don't know that road, or I don't know that beach, or I don't know that walk, but doing that, then a trust is created with nature or ourselves in doing that. Or a negative to that would be, okay, I'm going to go down the social media scroll zone and, feel like crap in half an hour. Why do I feel like crap? Because there's so much out there, and then the comparative analysis in a negative way starts to impact. So I don't enjoy that. Eating crap food, or all of these things. Like, it comes down to consumption. It really can affect our fear. It can escalate our fear, or it can, or we can choose to go into places that don't do that. Yeah. It's
How do
tricky.
you I have a question that is super relevant for me right now for my work, because I facilitate workshops for leadership teams, and and I had the pleasure on Tuesday and Wednesday to participate as a kind of co-coach in a workshop that an absolute master coach from Switzerland facilitated, and and she was really, she had no agenda for the workshop. It was a 2-day workshop, and we went in there, and she just co-created this workshop with this leadership team. There were like 12 people, I think, or 11. And she created it really out of herself. It just, like, she was so connected to everybody. Like, it was like a process of weaving. Like, she would put something out, then they would come back with reactions. She would take that in. And then, like, after the first day, we went home, and she was like a parallel processor. Like, she would create this huge picture out of all the information that she had gathered, and then we organized it, structured it, and then the next morning she had more to say, because she hardly slept the night. Like, she was just processing all this, and then the next morning we got up really early. We went to the workshop room, and we took a whiteboard, and we just structured everything that happened the first day, and created day 2, the experience for the people. And then 2 hours later, they came in, and was just, it really blew my mind. It was wonderful, and it just reminds me of, like, when you work with communities, when you work with people, right? You work with people who, like, you don't know their backgrounds. You don't know if they are talented, if they're not talented, if they are very self-critical, if they are not self-critical, if like, how they work in teams, like, and then how do you trust that? Like, you can't control these people, right? So how do you do it? Like, how do you trust that things turn out well?
I think with workshops, whether it's sometimes when people are doing a life drawing workshop or a creative practice here, it's really just about creating the space and allowing space for people to be themselves. And truth, how they're going, as in their truth, rises to the surface some way. And that's a very personal space for people. And I guess as a facilitator of that space, it's really just about mutual respect and allowing people to be who they are at any given moment, isn't it? That's how
And
it feels.
how do you stay patient in the process? Like, how do you not become, like, worried about the result or the progress, or like?
Well, it's not mine to worry about, really. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm thinking now about workshops we've held here at this space that I'm in now, where there's,
Yeah.
someone else will be facilitating a collage workshop. And often the beautiful thing that happens with crafts practices and drawing or any artistic practice is that it's an emotional space. And some people have not been given permission to access that space. And so for them, it can be, if they've had loss in their life or isolation or whatever that may be, intense emotions that perhaps they haven't been able to express. It can often come out very easily in their arts practice, and then they'll see it, and their reaction is often quite emotional. And so I think for me, in my community engagement, it's not to interfere with that. It's just to really hold space and allow people to be who they are when those things happen. The work ends up always, I have no problem with the work that comes of it. It's always magnificent. I trust that process, that whatever's going to be made is going to be magnificent. I don't have to worry about that. I just have to stay with what's happening right here, and there's always a place where it shows itself in the end result. If I'm too busy in my head thinking about, how can I implement that piece into, say, an installation or it doesn't work. There's always, it's a bit like glue. It's like, that's not meant to be there. So, does that make sense?
It does. Yes, it does. And I'm trying to use your ideas or your thoughts. Like, I'm trying to project it into my work, where I sit like with a leadership team in a room and the result really matters to them. Like, they pay a lot of money for the coaching, and at the end they want to have results that propel their business forward.
But initially they've got a question. I mean, if in your circumstance, they've obviously come there to answer a question, whether it be to, get more skills or to get support in some problem that they've. But behind that question is a trust. So there's already a relationship with you that they trust that you're going to help them find that.
Yes.
But so much when we are seeking a result, we've kind of got to get out of the way to make that happen, don't we? I mean, that's been my experience, not to be too esoteric about it, but I guess it is. It's that thing of, you just, like, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And when you put a group of people together and they've got to make art together, you don't know what's going to end up happening, but it's always going to be something. There's going to be a result in the end. There's going to be learning for everyone. We always learn something about the process. That's the value.
And you could say, it's art, like whatever comes out of it, like you just need the right eye to look at it. But same in business. Like, I had workshops where I thought at the end the result was great, and the people who were in the workshop, they looked at what we created and they were like, that was not worth it. And I've been in workshops where people look at the result and go like, this is amazing. And I thought, guys, this is nothing. And
it's so subjective. I mean, it ends up being that thing. And I just thought of it just now as that, like, if I think about a piece of artwork of mine, I don't think about the artwork. I think about the time that I was making that artwork and what was going on when I made that artwork. It's an emotional kind of response to that time and place.
Yes.
And yes, it's a beautiful piece of work and it's up on the wall. But to me, I go, I was there then doing this, and this. And then someone walks in and they see that artwork. And to them, they're propelled to a memory of what their experience is of blue sea, perhaps, or something else. And so in the end, it's this thing of, it's the death of the author, so to speak, like Roland Barthes, a life, it has its own life. Yes. Once you give it away, or once you present it to the world, it carries on. It has its life of its own. It's no longer mine, but it will always be my memory of that thing, or my experience of the creating of it,
And and that's what I'm learning more and more, is that the process that people are in, the experience, how they get to a result can be more important than the result. And
yeah.
and how I act while they are in the process, like if I get nervous, if I get impatient, if I get judgmental, I think that's what it means to really hold the space, to really to trust, to have faith that it's gonna be okay. Like, and that's the only way you can really lead in a connected way, like with the participants.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, I'm not naturally someone that goes, yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning this new thing. It's going to be wonderful. Yeah, give it to me. Like, I'm going to start this painting and it's going to be really, no, I go, God, this is so hard. Oh no, I've got, recently I did this, I've done this painting and it's a milk crate. But I'm not painting the milk crate. I'm painting the feeling of the milk crate. It's plastic. It's like, what is that? And it's, and it was so hard. And, the process of learning, it's difficult. What do they say? You don't, a camp isn't a good camp unless you get a scar. How do we remember that? Yeah. And
A
then we
camp
learn.
is not a good camp unless you get a scar. Like,
Yeah. Where's the scar?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and yeah, learning is, like, I remember there was a time when I was still in Shanghai because I used to be talented when I was young, with drawing
I think you're probably
things,
very
and
talented still. You'd probably still be very talented, I'm sure.
that's what my mom thinks, and what she keeps telling me, and but not that often anymore. Now she's quite happy with just who I am. But when I was still in Shanghai, she often said, "Look, why don't you start painting again? Why don't you start painting again?" And then when I got into recovery, and I had, my first moments or days in, like, serenity and connectedness and peace of mind, and I got a notebook again, and I sometimes just sat there and I did some sketches, and they weren't good. they 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 weren't good, but they were good enough. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
could actually,
Sometimes
I could be happy with them. I could really be happy with them.
were you happy with them, or were you happy with the fact that you just did them? Because,
Both.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
you're right. You're right. It was like, I was
that's
super,
the thing.
super happy that I did it, and I
Yeah.
thought they could still be better. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just the act of doing, the act of
Yes. I
doing.
was happy that I did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, regardless of what happens, like, oh,
Because
wow.
it took courage. It took so much
Yeah.
courage.
Because you face yourself. I mean, that's what the creative process is that you
And
actually, you can't, you can't lie to yourself in that space. So, of course,
yes, and it's not
all the
like,
stuff comes bubbling up to the surface, all the fears and all the self-hatred, and, the mother father voice, and all those voices come in. And because you're actually, there's something that happens in the mark making process. I'm making a mark here, and do I trust myself to do that?
yeah.
Mm.
Do I trust myself to do that? I think that's a lovely. I'm just looking at it. It's like top of the hour. I promised 60 minutes. We took a bit of time with the technical stuff. I think that's a really good time to end it, actually. I'm super, super happy with the conversation.
So good to talk with you, Frank. Yeah,
Yes.
such a
Loved it.
nice.
Loved it. Oh, and just like, Yeah, miss you.
Yeah, me too. Where did that time
Oh,
go? What is it? 10,
yes.
15 years? I know. It's like,
It's it's
well, let's not
when
leave
did
it
you
too
leave?
long. Yeah, I mean, it's 2025. I think 15, I left Shanghai, but then I'm, obviously gone back. So it's 10 years,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe,
yeah, yeah.
maybe 10 years.
Oh.
Hey, Tch, there we go. Um,
Well,
don't leave it so long. I won't.
yes,
Come to
yes.
come to Australia. Maybe I'll come to Germany. Where are you
Well,
exactly?
yeah. In
In
Munich. In
Munich.
Munich, yeah. No ocean here, but mountains and rivers.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I'd love to. I'm gonna put the link to your gallery into the show notes for people listening. So
Thanks so much.
thank you very much.
Lots of
Thank you very much.
love.